Like, you know exactly like what sewer, like if you've ever seen the Shawshank Redemption, like that type of sewer. So imagine a sewer this high, you're 22 years old at this point. And you start crawling in there, and well, sewer is a sewer, so it has sewage, and sewage is whatever we flush down, so you can imagine what that is. So imagine crawling through that, it's quarter filled with sewage, just walking through sludge. It's pitch dark. You can't stop crawling because there's people behind you, so you have to keep forward no matter how disgusting the stench, no matter how scared you are. So my dad went through the sewer. The sewer went from Colonia Libertad, which is the Tijuana neighborhood literally directly on the U.S.-Mexico border. He went into the sewer, then he popped out in the American side in the city of San Isidro. So every which way but loose, my dad came here, and eventually, even though my parents, they come from villages literally right next to each other, they met up here in Anaheim. They had their family. I'm the oldest of 4. When I entered kindergarten, the only language I knew how to speak was Spanish, along with all my siblings and all my cousins, all of us, and well, here I am speaking to all you folks in English. So what I always tell people when I talk about my own personal upbringing, it was very much like living in Mexico. In other words, everyone in our small community were people from my parents' villages. All the village gossip, in Spanish we call it rancho chismes. All the village gossip, every weekend was spent going to a baptism, a wedding, a funeral, like everything very pertaining to village life. So growing up, that was my culture, Mexican culture, but at the same time we're here in the United States, so I grew up on both sides of the equation, of the Mexican, of the hyphen to be specific, the Mexican part and the American part. So growing up, I never had any idea in the world that people could possibly have a problem with Mexicans, that people could possibly have any stereotypes about Mexican culture or Mexican people. It actually wasn't until college until I started realizing that people have a problem. Some people do have a problem with Mexicans. So whether it be culture, whether it be language, whether it be immigration status. And it bothered me quite a bit because, again, I'm the child of Mexican immigrants. My dad was an illegal immigrant. And we came out fine. I ended up getting my master's degree. My sister's got a master's degree. My other sister's getting a doctorate she's studying to become a doctor. Then the youngest just got into college. And we were all the children of what other people would call dumb Mexicans. My parents, even though they've been in this country for 40 years, they spend probably 95% of their lives speaking Spanish. They know how to speak English, but they're more comfortable speaking Spanish. But nevertheless, they were able to make a success of themselves in this country. So it bothered me that people would have a problem with my family, with my cousins, even with my own political opinions. So as I was going through college and then eventually I became a reporter, I really thought it was important to fight those stereotypes. So as a reporter, I started doing stories about Mexican immigration, and especially if you know anything about Orange County, it's one of the Mexican-hating capitals of the United States. There's just a whole lot of whackness in Orange County. And a lot of the whackness pertains to the Mexican community and how they relate to other folks. So I started doing stories about them. Some serious stories, for instance, I was one of the first people in the United States to interview Jim Gilchrist, the founder of the Minutemen Project, and we had a civil conversation. We didn't agree, obviously, but we had a civil conversation. I did longer stories about the story that I talked about with my family. I did a little bit of everything, but as a reporter, you're always trying to find a new angle on a particular story. In reporting, in journalism, we have something called beats. In other words, a particular subject that you're supposed to cover forever and ever and ever. The immigration beat, like film entertainment, whatever. So for the immigration beat, I wanted to take a new approach, a new angle. And so this is about November 2004. I'm stuck at this rut. Like, how can I cover immigration where I won't get bored, but at the same time I can make the points that I need to make? And so my editor came to me with a brilliant idea. He, working in Orange County, specifically in the city of Santa Ana, which is one of the most Mexican cities in the United States statistically. It's the largest city in the United States with an all-Latino city council. So he's driving up the main street, the city of Santa Ana. He's from Irvine, so he's kind of sheltered from Mexicans in Irvine. And he's driving his BMW, and he comes to me, and he's all excited. He's like, oh yeah, I saw this cool billboard. It's a Mexican guy, and he's wearing a Viking helmet, and he has long hair, and his eyes are crossed, and he's looking out into the ocean blue with an iceberg, and I think he's a radio DJ, and I think his name's Pilot. Have you ever heard of a Pilot before? So I corrected him. I said, no, it's not Pilot, it's El Piolín. For those of you who have never heard of El Piolín before, he is the most listened to radio DJ in the United States. Every morning, at least 18 million people listen to El Piolín. Locally here, he comes out on 101.9. He's actually based actually just down the 134 in Glendale. So El Piolín, most listened to DJ. The most listened to number 2 is Rush Limbaugh, who's of course very, very famous. By comparison, he only has 12 million listeners. So El Piolín just, the ratings titan of radio in the United States. And his show's interesting because he plays Mexican music, and then he's had like NPR trying to help people. He'll have free legal advice, he'll have free medical advice for people, and then the other parts like half Howard Stern, so making noises when pretty women are in the studio. Like, it's a really interesting show. What mattered to me though is El Piolín, he's from Mexico, from the state of Jalisco, but when he first came to the United States, he came to Santa Ana, California, in Orange County. So I told my editor at the time, his name's Will, I told him, Will, you're pretty stupid for not knowing who El Piolín is. Not because you're a white man and all white people are supposed to know everything about Mexicans. No, not at all. But because you're the editor of a big newspaper in Orange County, and you don't know some of the big stories affecting people in your community in Orange County. Will could have easily fired me, he could have yelled at me, he could have deported me if he wanted to. But thank God he did none of those. Instead, we were on the 5th floor of a building, that's where our office was, so we could still see the humongous El Piolín billboard out into the horizon. So he said, there's a lot of people that are dumb like me about Mexicans. Some of them innocently so, who just really have no clue, are just curious. Some of them are just flat out racist. Why don't we make fun of that ignorance that people have about Mexicans in Orange County? And I told him I didn't want to do it. Not because I thought that it would be an offensive column or because I was too politically correct. I just didn't think it was a really good idea. But he kept insisting, and we actually had to fill the newspaper in with something that particular week. So I said, okay, fine. We'll do it one time only. It's going to be a joke column. We're never going to run it again. Let's have fun with it. So I went back to my desk and I thought to myself, what could be the stupidest question about Mexicans that I could imagine somebody asking me? So I thought of it. So I went back and I wrote, since it was supposed to be an advice column, that's the whole thing. It was going to be an advice column for people for people to ask questions on how to deal with Mexicans. And so I wrote myself a question. I said, since it's an advice column, you always have to start off with dear. So it started off, Dear Mexican, why do Mexicans call white people gringos? And then my response was that Mexicans don't call gringos gringos, only gringos call gringos gringos, and Mexicans actually call gringos gabachos. Now, if you're paying any attention to me at all, you'll know I contradicted myself about 3 times in my answer. It was supposed to be a stupid question. Remember, I wanted to make it the stupidest possible question imaginable, but since it was supposed to be a joke column, I had to make an even stupider response, and I'm proud to say I didn't give a stupider response. And if people still didn't get the fact that it was supposed to be a joke, at the very bottom of the column, I put, got a spicy question about Mexicans, because all Mexicans are caliente. So got a spicy question about Mexicans, then ask, and then I put my personal email, not the one that I have now, but my personal email, so it was garellano@hocweekly.com. And if people still didn't get the fact that it was supposed to be a joke, we called it Ask a Mexican, and then we put this upside down exclamation point because people always get freaked out by that. And then if people still didn't get the fact that it was supposed to be a joke, and this is why I always have to bring a poster of this because I always forget it, so I'll just try to show it. We put this guy as my picture. So, and you don't even have to see it to know what I'm talking about. This is the Mexican that's been in the minds of Americans for 150 years, and we know who he is. He's a big, fat man, Mexican man, with a giant mustache. He's fat, of course, with bandoliers, a massive sombrero, the gold tooth, a leering grin. I talked about the big mustache, also like stubble, kind of like I have right now, right? Stubble. His cousin's known to sleep under cactuses in front of Mexican restaurants, too. This is the Mexican bandito caricature, the archetype. And this has been around for 150 years. And so again, I figured, if we're going to do an advice column about Mexicans, only in Orange County can people be that stupid about Mexicans where people would take this seriously. So if they're taking this seriously, I'm sure that those people would think that the person who's actually writing this column would think this is the actual guy writing it. This is the Mexican writing it. So we put it as a logo, then we published it, and we waited. We knew we were going to get a reaction to the column because anytime you talk about immigration or Mexicans, really nowadays all across the country, people go crazy. And that's what happened. Some people liked the column, some people hated the column. Some people said, like some Latinos said it was racist toward Mexicans, it was offensive, it was perpetuating stereotypes. Other Latinos loved it. They thought it was a great way to fight racists. Some white people hated the column. They said it was racist against white people. And then other people said, like, way to make fun of my racist white cousin in Norco. Go, way to do it.